Hello, everyone. I am so thrilled to welcome you to today's conversation. I have the absolute pleasure of speaking with my dear friend, Tiffany Neuman. She is the creator of the Legacy Brand Method, and she helps highly motivated, mission driven entrepreneurs create their legacy brand. That includes mine here, yours truly, for both Ashley Bernardi and Nardi Media. And when I'm talking about these legacy brands, these are ones that make a lasting impact for generations to come. This is all Tiffany's brilliance behind it. So today we're diving into something that I know many of you care about: how to make your message a movement, which is so aligned with the work that we do here at Nardi and also, of course, Tiffany too. We're going to be discussing how your brand and message can not only drive business success, but also make a real difference in the world, especially in today's climate. We all need that right now. So if you're looking to create a brand that stands the test of time, or if you've ever struggled with getting your message to truly connect with people, you are in the right place today, my friends. You can drop your questions for Tiffany in the chat here. We're going to dive in. Tiffany, thank you so much for joining me today. It is so wonderful to see you.
Absolutely, Ashley. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh my gosh. Well, okay, a lot to dive into. I want to just start with how you've built this framework around the idea of a legacy brand. What does it mean to have a legacy brand, and why is it more important than ever in today's world?
Sure. So my definition of a legacy brand, you mentioned it a little bit earlier, is it's a brand that stands the test of time. So if we think about some of the big brands out there like Levi's Jeans or Apple, those brands that we recognize, they're what I considered like corporate legacy brands. They've been around, they stand the test of time, they stay true to their values, they stay true to their core. And that's really when I came from the corporate world into the online space specifically and working with small and medium business owners. I really realized that there was this need for an actual brand. A lot of people think branding is just their logos, colors, and fonts, which are a small portion of the brand, but they were really missing the mark on like the full ecosystem of a brand, or what I call a brand operating system. And so what I really wanted to do was to help people have, these brands that those big corporations spend millions on for obviously a fraction of the cost, and have them. So the other piece of the legacy is I really help people look for where they're going in the future. So what is your 3, 5, 10-year vision? And we reverse engineer it so you can grow and evolve into a brand rather than building a brand for where you're at now, because in 2 or 3 years, you'll have to reinvent yourself. So we really build that solid foundation, and you'll evolve and you'll shift and things may need tweaking, but you won't actually have to like keep changing it all the time.
I love that. I think there's so many entrepreneurs, I'm certainly one of them, that have focused first on short-term success. What do you think the difference is between a brand that's transactional versus one that's transformational?
Oh, love. That's such a good question, Ashley. So really for me, it's playing the long game, right? I think a lot, like exactly what you said, a lot of us focus on these short-term goals, and some people get success quickly, but you don't have that solid foundation. And so a lot of people end up burning out or, switching gears and getting all the shiny objects and getting confused and confusing their audience because they're switching gears all the time. And so when you slow down to speed up, what I like to say, to really craft a brand that stands the test of time, then you don't have to worry about that. You're playing the long game and life just becomes easier. Building your business becomes easier, more ease and flow.
I love that. And I'll say even personally, because I've worked with you, Tiffany, for so many years now, both for Nardi Media's brand and Ashley Bernardi, and now my speaking, VIP day, you name it. I do see that long game, and I have slowed down, but in many ways, the business has sped up in the most beautiful, natural way. All thanks to working with you too. I could not have done that without you. So let's talk about turning your message into a movement. I think that's one of the biggest struggles I see. It's like whether it's a business or a cause or an individual, is really getting people to rally around a message. And I know there are a lot of people out there today that have a message that they want to share. So what do you think separates a brand that fades into the noise from one that sparks that real connection and loyalty?
Yeah, so there's, a few things that are at play there specifically. And one caveat too that I want to mention before answering the question is that when we talk about making a movement, some people are like, well, I don't even want to impact millions of people. I don't want this massive movement. And that's where making a movement can be impacting millions of people, or it could be impacting hundreds of people, right? Like that doesn't really matter, but making your message a movement, like you said, it really causes people to rally around. And so the core piece of that is we really look at your values first. So values-based businesses tend to do better, especially in this atmosphere right now. There's just been a lot of bro marketing and manipulation tactics and all sorts of things used over the past years as marketing has gotten, like kind of to this apex. I like to say it, like 50s and 60s, you could just say like, this is how my product works and people would buy it. But now there's so much noise. People do anything to stand out. So there's so many strategies around being mission-based, values-based, building real relationships, and then also like literally how you share your message and how you craft your message. Because when you sound the same as everyone else, you're just going to blend in. So what I really help my clients do is what I call create a category of one brand. So you're really standing out from that noise. And we look at how to create a signature framework. When you have that in place, then you have your own methodology. And a lot of my clients tend to trademark those processes. And it's not even like the step-by-step process. It's really how you go about doing your work and what makes your work special and different from anyone else doing your craft. So it's like my legacy brand method, right, is an example of that. And so when you have that in place and the right messaging to speak about it, and you can speak about it eloquently and not fumble and all of those things, then people take notice. And the other thing that I like to say also is once you get that nailed down is actually being repetitive. And that can feel boring to people, especially entrepreneurs. We love change. Most of us, we want to come up with new angles and all of the things. But a legacy brand, the nice thing about it is once you have it in place, you can change the angles and change things enough. But when you stay in your lane and that ecosystem, that's when you get known. So I'm known for phrases like, you can't see the label from inside the bottle. Like you're too close to have an objective view. The legacy brand, like there's certain phrases that we end up using that you get known for. And that really positions you as an expert too.
Oh, it's so good. And I always teach this in media training. Repetition is the key to retention. So it's okay to repeat yourself. And it's so funny because I work with so many authors and they're like, oh my gosh, I keep saying the same thing over and over again. I'm like, well, it's a new audience every single time. You're going to have to repeat.
Exactly.
And so even though it's not new to you and it might feel boring and repetitive, that is the first time that somebody is hearing it. And I love that you also gave the example of like those kind of catchphrases. Like ours here at Nardi is like, we're pleasantly persistent. That is something I've been saying from day one, and it's stuck with me. And people know that we are persistent because we say it. All right, I love this. This was so helpful. So tell us about some other like key elements to make a brand's message movement worthy. I know you talk about your legacy brand formula. You have the framework. I've personally used it. Are there other elements that we should be looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I talk about a brand operating system, that's a big piece of it because when maybe you're known on social media. I actually don't really use social media except here on LinkedIn. So we're in the right spot today. So if you want to be social media optional, there's other places to put your message out there, obviously. But you want to think about every touch point of the brand because it's one thing to capture somebody's attention, right? So maybe you get through the noise and they like your social media post, but how do you actually captivate them? How do you keep them, like you talked about retention? How do you retain the attention? How do you convert them into something that you're offering or, lead magnet or something like that? And then it goes all the way into the ecosystem of once they purchase, how do you make sure and keep them happy? What are the internal aspects of the brand? Because that creates raving fans that then will share your message for you. And that's how you truly make your message a movement. Because we can shout from the rooftops about ourselves all day, right? Yep. And that works. But when you have other people out there being ambassadors for your brand, that's how it really turns into a movement.
Yeah. And another question, how much does like, and I think I'm going to know your answer, but I want to ask this making, like, you want to make someone feel something for your brand, right? And I think
Mhm.
about that, like when I work with you, I feel supported, I feel heard, I feel loved. This is why I keep coming back over and over and over again. And in the same way, I want our clients to feel supported and loved and heard and excited. So how much of like
Mhm.
the client or potential clients feeling comes into
Oh, I love that you brought that up because it's almost everything. And I was actually just recording a podcast episode about this is the energetics of a brand. Because again, even if everything I talked about today, you have awesome messaging, you have nice visuals, you have the brand ecosystem, the client journey is on point. If you have all of that, but your energy is off, like you are not a good person or you're not confident, or you're lying or something, I don't know, people will sense that energetically. And
Yeah.
so that is a huge part of it is how literally what is the energy that you're emoting like here online, when you're on calls with people, and then also, what are the energetics of the language? So you really want to look at what are the language you're calling in with. There's a lot of people teaching like you have to go really deep into the pain points so people will work with you. And I actually don't agree with that. Yes, you do need to remind people, of what they're struggling with and how you can help them. But the more you dive into the pain points, the more you're going to attract people who are scarcity mindset oriented. And those are not clients that we typically want to work with.
Nope.
So the main thing when I build websites, when my team builds websites for people, we want to think about, but even social media posts, everything else, you nailed it, is like, how do you want people to feel? And
Mm.
that's in all aspects.
I love that. And yeah, it's so true because it's something that I've learned from you that it really is so much about feeling. And I wrote my book about it too. So it goes a long way. Okay, I'm wondering, I'm just so curious if you could share an example of a business or an entrepreneur who successfully turned their message into a movement. I have one in mind. I'll share mine, but I want to hear yours first.
Yes. Oh gosh. I feel like there's quite a few. And then again, that's some people who are kind of like behind the scenes experts, which is actually me. I don't have like a massive following and a massive movement, but I look at the impact I make through a ripple effect,
Yeah,
right? So, like, by all of the people I'm touching, that goes out into the world and it
that's
continues to grow. But one person who comes to mind, I guess my client Amanda Walker, who's a mutual, you also know Amanda. We worked on her initial brand. She was a health coach, and then more recently, she wanted to rebrand because she was so successful as a health coach. And the initial brand that I helped her build that went so well that she decided she no longer wanted to be in the health coaching space. She actually wanted to shift into coaching coaches in a sense because she had just really built an amazing model, and so we rebranded her to be the best damn coach. And it worked out so great because it not only positioned her as a thought leader and her as the best damn coach, but also helping new coaches, most of them who had transitioned from corporate. So they had a really solid foundation and credibility, but they wanted to transition that to be, online coaches. And so she created methodologies that were really impactful. And by being known as the best damn coach, her business has just really taken off. And we really used some simple techniques where a lot of brands and businesses, there's a lot of language and there's a lot happening. And she has one of the simplest websites we've ever built, but it's actually been doing really, really well.
That's I love Amanda. I love that example. Everyone should check her out too. And because you've worked with so many incredible people. One that comes to mind for me, that this book that I just love right now, is Mel Robbins and the Let Them Theory. That
Mm,
has become such a movement that people are getting let them tattoos on them. And,
yes.
and I just think that's so powerful. And I think one thing with Mel is that she's repetitive. She's repetitive in all of the interviews that she does. It's let them, it's that phrase. And it goes
Mhm.
back to what you and I were talking about earlier. It catches on, and
So
um,
true.
she's her best advocate for the phrase let them. And
Mhm.
as a result, now it's like what, millions. I think it's a New York Times best-selling book too.
Yeah, such
Um,
a good example.
Yeah. So, and I love her and her work, and she does. And I'm like, oh, maybe it's starting. I don't have any tattoos, but do I want to let them tattoo? So that's amazing. I love those examples. All right. So what about if someone's feeling stuck? Their message isn't
Mm.
landing. What do you do? What's the first thing you do to help them on trying to fix it and to get unstuck?
Great question. So there's a few things. Usually it starts with sort of an interview just to hear their language. As you can see, I'm all about language and just hearing what truly is holding them back, because a lot of times it isn't what they think it is.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be their own energetic blocks or upper limits. Sometimes the language is actually still talking to people that they used to attract, and they want to attract different people, and or sometimes they just simply never learned how to do copywriting or make their message a movement, which is normal if that's not their sweet spot, right? And
Yeah.
so really looking at and then determining what the blocks are and how we can move forward. A lot of times it is reinventing their messaging, and then sometimes, people, it's an energetic block, and we'll do more breakthrough work or the two combined. It really depends.
I love that. And I see that also even in the work that we do. There's just a mindset with media and having to really
Mm,
uncover why you want media versus like, do you want it for you and the notoriety, or are you really wanting to make an impact? And it's just important
so
to know that as like where your heart is truly coming from, because that will inform your campaign.
Mhm.
So I love that there's just this mindset piece and element in it, because I see that in the work that I do too. All right. So if right now, Tiffany, there's a lot of uncertainty in the world. How can
Mhm.
brands stay strong, continue to grow, especially no matter what is happening? And I use just like our current political climate here in America right
Yeah.
now. There's a lot of nerves. There's a lot of uncertainty. And as business owners, I know there's a lot of business owners like, oh my gosh, what is going to happen? Is my business going to make it? What do you say to them?
Yeah, so this is an interesting question and such a good question, because I actually just did a couple podcast episodes of this as well, because I think a lot of us want to, myself included at first, it's like our initial response is like the flight, freeze, fawn, the F words.
Yeah,
And a lot of people do different things, and a lot of people I've been seeing are kind of frozen of not knowing how to share the message, not knowing how to talk about it. Should they talk about the political stances or not? And that's a personal choice. But ultimately, my suggestion is to keep going, because this is when the world needs it most. I
that's
truly
great.
believe the politicians aren't going to save us at this point. We need to stand up as entrepreneurs, the powerful work that we're doing. And I've questioned this myself of like, okay, I create brands, like how is that going to change the world? Well, when I'm impacting people like you who's out there helping amazing thought leaders get publicity, or health coaches, or people who actually are changing the world, when we can support them, that's how it's going to be an inside job, is basically what I believe. And so I think this is actually the time to lean in, and the more I've been leaning in, the more magic I see unfolding. And I can't explain it, because a part of me is like, this is weird. It should be, like with the chaos happening. But I also think it's a time that people are kind of slowing down to speed up and
Mhm.
taking stock of like, is this really what I want in my life? Kind of
Yeah.
questioning how they want to move forward. And, we don't know what's going to happen, but I truly think if we follow our passion and be a light in the world and come together as business owners, it's going to make a massive difference.
I totally agree. I was actually thinking that earlier today, Tiffany, that in these times, it's entrepreneurs and like creatives and healers are the ones that are going to help heal the world. We
Hmm.
can't wait for the politicians anymore. It's
No,
not working,
no,
right? So,
no.
so this is when I feel like the true trailblazers that come out and create that change or just continue to march to the beat of their own drum, something that I've always done. And I know a lot of entrepreneurs can say the same, but it's our time. It's right now. And you and I have talked about that too.
Yeah, I love that you said the trailblazing piece too. I really think, some people are going to back down and kind of retreat a little bit. And then those of us who step in and step forward, and you see this in entrepreneurship too, there's kind of like waves of people who like kind of rise to the top and maybe fade out, or rise to the top and kind of stay there. But then there's like a new generation that's coming up. And I think it's time for like a new generation with a slightly different mindset and different approach, that's going to really help make the waves forward.
Yeah. All right. So I have another question. What advice do you have for people who are hesitant to put themselves out there and boldly share their message? And this is where I come in with media training. You help them with the message. I help them verbally communicate it. And there is a lot of fear, and this is what I help people break through. But how can you help people, and what advice for people do you have to help them boldly share their message?
Yeah, so this one hits home because I tell a story of like, I was the girl who was afraid to ask for some ketchup at the restaurant from the waitress. Like, I was so shy. And like when I went into corporate, I was behind the scenes of these massive brands like Burt's Bees, Stoli Vodka, and so luckily I could I was behind the scenes of the brands, but I would still have to like present. And that was hard enough. Just presenting to a small room of like C-suite executives or something just scared the heck out of me. So thinking about putting myself on social media or putting myself out there like live was really difficult at first. And so I think the main thing is you have to stay in touch with your why and really stay focused on like, what's going to happen if you don't do the work? How many people are not getting to access to you? And if you're a true expert, like I know you are, one of the best publicity people I've ever known, then you really have to think about like how many people aren't getting their books out there, aren't getting their message out there. And even though it's scary, there's a lot of people who are not experts and who do not have the knowledge that we have that are like, I'm an expert, and aren't going to give them good service or aren't going to get them the results. And that's really sad when I see people who aren't really qualified doing really well when the true experts are afraid to share their message. And it's very common too, because true experts are usually so close to their work that they almost feel like, and they're so used to it, it just comes so natural, they don't realize how powerful they actually are.
That's so true. And just such inspiring words, Tiffany. So before we wrap, I would love for you to share where people can first connect with you and also begin building their own legacy brand with you. I know you have a workshop coming up, Make Your Message a Movement. So tell us all the good things of how we can be in your world and your energy.
All right. So right here on LinkedIn is one spot. It's the only social media I'm doing at this point, just to save my own sanity and time. So connect with me here. Also, my website is yourlegacybrand.com. And then, as you mentioned, Ashley, the workshop is coming up. It's a 3-part workshop series. It's a deep dive where I help entrepreneurs really start creating their brand operating system. So we look at your ideal clients, how to talk to them directly, what are good lead magnets, how do you define your brand purpose, how do you look at rebranding, what are the first steps? And like you said, it's called Make Your Message a Movement without relying on social media and outdating bro marketing tactics that don't work, because that's what I'm all about.
I love it. And I think there's so many people out there. I mean, I talk to so many entrepreneurs and authors. They're like, I love social media. I don't like being on it. And Tiffany, what you've always said is like, you don't have to be like you don't have to be on it.
Right.
To feel
and
like
there's ways to have a presence without being tied to it all the time too.
That's right. And what I've like personally learned is where I love showing up is on LinkedIn, in this professional setting where we can talk about things that I love to talk about, how to make your message movement with my favorite people. To me, that fills my cup, that brings me energy. And it's also such a great way to share our message and our wisdom with the world. So yeah, so like you can be choosy about it too. All right, Tiffany, thank you. I am so grateful for your brilliance and your wisdom that you've given us today. And just for anyone that's thinking of hiring Tiffany, like I said, I have personally worked with her over the years on so many different things, such as branding. We just recently had a VIP session, a breakthrough session. There's just incredible ways that Tiffany can help you elevate your business and get it into the hands of the people who need it most. So thank you, Tiffany. I'm so grateful to have you in my life and on this LinkedIn today. And I'm so grateful for the wisdom that you shared.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. And everyone, I would love to hear from you. You can drop some comments below. What did you learn today? What did you love? What do you have more questions about? We would love to hear from you. And as always, visit Tiffany's website. It's yourlegacybrand.com. And I am nardimedia.com. I hope everyone has a great day. And Tiffany, thank you once again.